Welcome to the Readeezy podcast, where we explore the power of reading and its ability to spark change in communities. My name is Olga Zahaisky. I'm a current intern at Readeezy, and I'm super excited to start us off in this podcast journey. So each episode is going to share insightful conversations with experts, educators, and passionate advocates as we discuss the challenges and opportunities surrounding literacy rates, innovative educational programs, and the importance of reading for K-12 students. In today's episode, we have Matt Giovanniello from Frenalytics with us, and we'll be discussing how our missions here at Readeezy ties into the educational and literacy programs at Frenalytics. So Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about Frenalytics and its mission?
Absolutely. Olga, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the CEO and co-founder of an edtech organization called Frenalytics. I have been working on our company since I was a little kid. In fact, when I was 12 years old, my grandmother suffered a really severe stroke while undergoing open heart surgery on Long Island, where I'm from. And I built the initial version of our technology for her to help her relearn essential life skills, familial relationships, letters and numbers, and other types of skills that she had issues learning and relearning as a result of her brain injury. While we built out our tech to help not only my grandmother, but also other patients struggling and suffering from stroke, dementia, and traumatic brain injury, it wasn't until the peak of the pandemic, 2020, when we realized that this technology could be used for students with disabilities, English language learners, and other types of struggling students as well. That's when we created a new version of our now known today as Frenalytics EDU platform that helps with data collection, progress monitoring, communication, and compliance in those special education and in those English language learner classrooms. A couple of years after we started in the education space, I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Cleary, and we formed a partnership to bring the Frenalytics and the Readeezy platforms together. And I'm glad that that path brought us to this podcast episode and everything that we've done since. So thanks for having me.
So we are super lucky to be speaking with Matt today, and Readeezy is super proud to partner with Frenalytics to add a literacy component for older students to their suite of features. And I wanted to start by discussing Frenalytics educational programs. So what inspired you to focus on literacy and educational programs at Frenalytics?
I think the research and the statistics are abundantly and really sadly clear that after the third grade, if a student has not acquired the appropriate literacy competency, that they tend to deviate off track and they never tend to catch up to their counterparts. And so when I first came across Readeezy and its stance on such a noble mission of helping close that gap by creating what we call in the industry high-low reading books, which are meant for older readers, but are at the vocabulary and accessibility level of what would be considered a younger reader, I thought that was a really cool way to bridge that gap and bring all of those reading resources into our system as well. As it relates to literacy in our platform specifically, because we have age appropriate but also standards aligned resources across the K-12 band for ELA, including phonics, grammar, vocabulary, reading comprehension, the whole nine yards, I think that for us to have a suite of short stories in our platform to begin with is a great start, but to further advance that mission by bringing interactive and fun, illustrated, animated books with check for understanding questions that the Readeezy library has to offer just makes it that much more immersive, that much more interesting, that much more accessible, and we're reaching a far wider band of students. So
Thank you, Matt. I was also curious, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in literacy education today?
well, a number of things come to mind. The first is, especially over the past couple of years, in cities like New York, where I'm based, and in many major cities around the US, we've had a large influx of students coming into the country who we consider newcomers. They don't know English as their first language, and oftentimes the public school system is the first formal experience that those students have to learn English and to learn it the right way. I think that it unfortunately but naturally puts those students at a disadvantage if they're coming to the country past that third grade cutoff, because we need to build their English competency and confidence from the start, but we have no resources to do so. And I think that's where tools like the ones that we're working on come into play. And I think that it's critically important to make sure that students feel seen and recognized and heard, and that those teachers know that these resources are out there. I think, historically, teachers have created their own resources, sometimes even paying one another or paying, through a platform like Teachers Pay Teachers, or by paying these expensive curriculum providers, understandably so, to try and make content and resources available to them. At the end of the day, because those resources aren't interesting or reaching the student where they are right now, they end up often being useless. And so I think that we need to really um, consider a new perspective as to how, especially our marginalized English language learners, can reach this content and get past that third grade cutoff closer to eighth or ninth or 10th grade where they are right now. I think it has a bunch of ripple effects if we do think about it in that way. And this isn't exclusive to English language learners. Students with reading-based disabilities are often affected by this disparity as well. But if we try and close that gap, I think the common unit of measurement for success is the literacy assessments at different state levels for their standardized assessments for things like in New York, the Regents assessment, for things that are recognized by college, the AP assessments and IB assessments. And so I think that, not only is it the right thing to do, but I think also through those metrics, we'll realize that students are more prepared for the upper grade levels, more prepared for college, and more prepared for career when we help and start by adding an increased focus on literacy and fluency.
That's great. I have such a personal connection to English wasn't my first language. Ukrainian was my first language. So, being a young student, being in class, it was definitely a very intimidating environment. And, when I was younger, I wish I had the outlets from Frenalytics and Readeezy to kind of support me because at that age, I needed that extra support. And I know you mentioned the metrics of the lesson plans and individualized learning. I was curious about, the personalized educational programs for students. So how has Frenalytics been impacted by their educational programs to encourage student engagement and learning retentions? Have the personal educational programs been successful?
So I think the personalized nature of the platform and the way that it can be used for students in life skills or special day class environments, self-contained environments can be really powerful. So when our team is putting content together, we're thinking about students with their varying disabilities. We're thinking about federal laws. We're thinking about students who are coming to the country, and we need to be culturally responsible and recognizing students who, don't necessarily know our norms here in the States, but if they're coming from Latin American countries, if they're coming from the Middle East, wherever it is, they want to be seen, like you said, Olga, in these stories and in these questions. And we need to make sure that the content that we have available speaks to them too.
That's truly amazing. Especially, I think it's super important that you also provide like a parent perspective, So I learned that you have a dashboard as well. Is it like a point tracking system? Is it grade based? Would you tell me a bit about the dashboard that parents are able to access?
Absolutely. The dashboard that we have for parents is super similar to the dashboard that we show for teachers. And we did that sort of intentionally so that parents can get a similar level of access to their child's performance as the teachers see of their students' performance. The fact that family members can be dialed in and pulled front and center to really have a voice and a say in how their loved one is doing, I think is pretty novel. I wish it wasn't, but in that case, we find it to be so. And so families can now see the exact skills that their child's working on during the school day, how they're doing, how often they're engaging in these lessons, and how closely they're achieving the IEP goals that have been written. All that data is critically important for a special ed teacher to know and for an English language learning teacher to know, is this effective? Are these the right skills to be assessing? Is this student growing and trending upwards, closer towards achieving their goals? Are they stagnating or are they regressing, and do we need to make an instructional change?
Great. It shows that Frenalytics is super data driven. It honestly seems so much more, honestly, better than the grades that I used to get in school because I never obviously got access to seeing my parents' grades for me. And, this seems like, beneficial, even though it requires some technology. It seems like it's very easy to access and it creates a closer relationship between the parent and child so they can truly cater to their child's needs.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it definitely requires a bit of a cultural shift in terms
Mhm.
of the amount of data and changing processes that staff members might have been following for a very long time.
And would you say, I know you've mentioned that there has been like a mixed reaction, especially if there's been a cultural difference. Would you say that, the dashboards and the personalized lesson plans, has this created a positive impact on the level of engagement and educational retention?
100%, absolutely. So for a district that has a very large special education program, instead of changing everything all at once, they might want to do something called a pilot, which is starting with a smaller group of students, a few staff members who might be very enthusiastic, very tech savvy, and have this pain point and are ready to just jump right in and start on it right now, even if there are a couple of bumps along the way. And so I think it's just that mindset shift that will lead these schools and districts up for success. Some are willing to do it far sooner than others. Others will take a minute to get there, but they'll be successful in due time. Part of why I'm so excited with bringing Readeezy's library of books into our system, because all of those stories are embedded, or all those themes are embedded into those stories that Maria, Dr. Cleary, and the team have put together. So I think that'll be a great way to support older readers. Even though academically they might be at a lower level, we want to help them bridge that gap and feel included and have resources for them that really speak to them.
That's amazing. Yes, Readeezy is super happy to partner with you. And, from looking at the books we've created, I can definitely see that, there's more of a shift of inclusivity and less of kind of this categorization that happens with students. So, just to gauge some future questions about Frenalytics, what would you say is next? Are there any upcoming innovations or expansions that educators should know about?
Yes, we have a lot of things in the works. I think one of the more exciting modules that I can't wait to release in the next couple of months is our upcoming goals module. And that really brings everything together in one place in our system as it relates to the IEP goals and other goals that are being set for the students using our platform. Further, we have some cool AI innovations coming out very soon that will also allow teachers to have outside specially trained models in AI reflect on the strength and the quality of the existing goals of a student, and then get inspiration for what that student's next set of goals should be based on all of the data that a system like ours is collecting.
Wow, truly, you guys are so innovative, and there's so many exciting things coming to Frenalytics. Wrapping up to our last question of the day, this is kind of our big picture question. So I was interested, what advice would you give to educators, parents, or policymakers about integrating technology into literacy education effectively?
It's a good question. A couple things come to mind. The first is having an open mind as it relates to incorporating technology into an educator's day to day, whether that is the teacher or the aide or the para themselves, the administrators of that school or that district, the school board, the parents, or even the students themselves. I think that we don't need to do much convincing to want students to jump on board for another technology tool. But I think that historically speaking, there can be a negative connotation that teachers have to adopting another technology tool because those that have come before us maybe weren't built with teachers in mind or left a bad taste in their mouth from privacy violations gone wrong, or there could be all sorts of reasons why teachers are hesitant to adopt technology that could really be game changing for them. And I think that when teachers get a voice in being able to say that yes or no, and they consider all of the different perspectives and they ultimately do say yes, they'll be the best people to gauge whether something is useful for them. And I hope we continue to do that. So I think, one of the big lessons there is be open-minded. The other is, I think, AI, again, is everywhere. It's only going to continue to grow into our workflows. And when done right, will, again, help teachers save a ton of time. And the reason I keep harping on that is, again, the statistics show that teachers are incredibly overworked, overburdened. We have the perhaps worst teacher shortage we've ever experienced. Over the past 5 years, I was reading recently how we have a net loss of nearly 500,000 teachers than
Wow.
we had pre-COVID, and we already had a teaching problem then. So
Hmm.
teachers are doing more than ever. They're expected to do more than ever. They're expected to carry more roles than ever, wear a lot of hats. And one way to address that and help them be more efficient in their job is by embracing these new tools. But I recognize that things are moving so quickly, it's hard for people to keep up.
That was fantastic advice. I feel like I've learned so much from you, and it's really exciting to see how Frenalytics is continuing to expand and really, foster to so many families, students, and educators. You guys are really doing a lot of great work. But I wanted to thank you once again for, participating in this podcast. For the future, Dr. Cleary mentioned that we'd love to combine our assessments with Frenalytics so teachers can get a fuller picture of their students. But we could definitely see how using some of Readeezy's content for comprehension assessment would be super beneficial. So we're excited to see what we can do with you in the future. And, for the listeners out there, we want to encourage you to subscribe, share the podcast, and engage with Readeezy. And please check out Frenalytics and see if their programs would, benefit your family. And please, use as much of the outreach as you can to see if they can support people you know.
Awesome, awesome. Olga, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you today. This was fun.
All right. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Have a great day.